11 Republicans going to square off tonight at the Reagan Library in California, but looking at today's Republican Party would make the Gipper anything but chipper. The party's moved so far right, it could be out of sight from what Reagan believed in. We'll discuss. Then Jon Stewart left The Daily Show, but he is still making noise. We'll tell you the issue that sent him to Washington to slam Congress today. And then a report from on the ground in Serbia about the growing refugee crisis in Europe. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in tonight for Richard French. And as we speak right now in Simi Valley, California at the kiddie table, you've got so-called kiddie table. You've got George Pataki, Rick Santorum, Bobby Jindal, and Lindsey Graham on stage in the first of two debates. A little less than 2 hours from now, the top 11 Republican candidates running for president will kick off the main event. Donald Trump, of course, in the lead in the polls, and as you might expect, he's getting all of the attention from the media and all of the attention from the other candidates. But the true star tonight could be this man, Ronald Reagan. Every candidate will likely take every opportunity they can to talk about Reagan and compare themselves to him. They want to glom onto his legacy, but the party, you could argue, has moved so far from that legacy that Reagan might not even recognize his own party. Listen to this from Reagan's debate with Walter Mondale in 1984.
I supported this bill. I believe in the idea of amnesty for those who have put down roots and who have lived here, even though some time back they may have entered illegally.
Now, it's hard to imagine any of today's Republican presidential candidates calling for amnesty, and Reagan delivered in 1986 when he did just that, provided amnesty for nearly 3 million immigrants. Reagan also raised taxes several times. He negotiated with the enemies like the Soviets and worked with Democrats to get things done. He even supported gun control. Could you imagine a President Trump, let's say, doing any of those things? Well, we've got the right panel to ask to find out. We're joined tonight by Nan Hayworth, former Republican Congresswoman from New York. She's also the state co-chair for Carly Fiorina. We will get to Carly time in just a little bit. Also on the panel tonight, political journalist and author Dominic Carter. And joining us is Evan Siegfried, a Republican strategist and the president of SOM Consulting. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for being here. So, with everybody expected to invoke Reagan on the panel tonight, is it at all disingenuous given the split from the party today from where Reagan was when he was in office?
No, his spirit and legacy should be invoked because they honored the party and the country. And it's up to these candidates, of course, as they proceed, truly to honor what President Reagan represented, which was the founding principles of our great democracy. He always talked, as we all know, about government being more responsible, smaller, more modest, and not controlling every aspect of our lives. And in those fundamentals, no one spoke more eloquently about it than Ronald Reagan did. Remember, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. The 7 most terrifying words in the English language. That was a Reagan aphorism. So these candidates all represent aspects of his legacy in powerful ways. And they should bear in mind the way in which he went about carrying that out.
But Evan, is it not just the policies themselves, but also the aggressiveness with which the Republican candidates seem to hold to those positions that run counter to where Reagan was? Taxes and working with the enemy or negotiating with them, gun control, those issues. Is there a lesson here for the Republican Party?
Well, I think if you take a step back, you're focusing on certain elements of the party. And the Republican Party has a diverse base with diverse beliefs on all these different issues. There are some Republicans who believe that gay marriage is appropriate. And you'll see that more among young Republicans. It's overwhelmingly, and that's the future of the party. There are other Republicans who don't. And I'm not one of those people who share that belief, but I'm thrilled for where we're going. And it's the same thing on all other issues.
But the 11 people who are going to be on that stage tonight, you're not going to see any of them, making a clarion call to raise taxes or supporting gun control.
Donald Trump's been calling to raise taxes.
On capital gains?
On hedge funders, just like Bill de Blasio actually called on people to raise taxes.
Dominic?
When President Reagan represented the party, that was the party at the time. He is considered one of the best presidents by many. I'm sure some Democrats will differ, but this is a different Republican Party in terms of the party trying to play to the base. And so, I see your point, but I don't really understand the comparison. It's different times. That was back then, 1984, and this is 2015, a different Republican, right?
But is the difference political, or is the difference actually in where the country is on these issues?
That's a good question. I guess I would say the difference is I just will stick to it's a different time. And President Reagan back then, I still remember when he passed away, going to Washington on assignment, and how the country, it became a bipartisan support of an American president, because that showed his popularity. So someone like me would embrace the idea that he was willing to work across the aisle with Democrats. Who knows, maybe in the future both parties, not just Republicans to Democrats, Democrats to Republicans. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to work together.
We've seen some candidates on some of these issues, especially immigration, try to dip a toe towards maybe not amnesty, but a path to citizenship, and getting pretty well rebuffed for it. Nan, is there any opportunity for a candidate to say, you know what, guys, everybody calm down. Here's why we need to take a different turn?
Right. Well, I agree completely with Dominic that times have changed, and they've changed in great measure because, frankly, decades of bad public policy, bad federal government policy have brought us to a point of desperation, including on immigration. Unfortunately, President Reagan's amnesty was not accompanied by the kind of measures that we really had to take to make sure that if we have laws governing immigration, they can actually be reasonably carried out starting at the country's borders. So candidates like, and it's true, yes, full disclosure, I'm supporting Carly Fiorina, but Carly Fiorina has sensibly said, look, the first thing we have to concentrate on, if we're serious about this, is getting done what we haven't done for 30 plus years, and that is actually to materially secure the country's borders. If you don't do that, none of the other things make sense.
Evan, one of the differences between the Reagan era in the 80s and today, it seems like the country has moved further to the left on a range of social issues, whether it's same-sex marriage or something else. Mm-hmm. Is that problematic for Republicans these days? I mean, there's a huge electoral advantage on a generic map for the Democrats. Whoever the Democratic nominee is going to start with 230 electoral votes in the bag. Is there a danger for the party in the long run?
I think there is on certain issues, but you have to talk about it. The country's a very big place, and different areas of the country believe in very different things. And I think in places like New York, if you're a Republican who is against gay marriage or other social issues, you are considered a leper, which is why in New York we see Republicans who are a little more moderate on issues, and they're much more fiscally conservative, which is a fiscally responsible thing to do. But when you go out to, say, Oklahoma, where it's a lot redder, they are far more likely to move a little more slowly along on social issues. But they will ultimately get there.
There's really only about 6 or 7 states that are going to decide the election, Florida being one of them, Colorado, Ohio. And the demographics, especially in those states, seem to be shifting, particularly when it comes to the Hispanic vote. I go back to immigration, Congresswoman. That's a potential danger spot for the party.
Demographically, I think it is a danger spot potentially, and it does behoove our Republican candidates to take the example of President Reagan's approach to heart. He was someone who sought truly and did unite people. Just what you said, Dominic, when you went for his funeral. He actually did work respectfully with people of different points of view. And I do think that there is an opportunity here for leadership on the part of all those candidates on the stage, particularly the 11 in the big stage, 8 o'clock, to make sure that they're not neglecting to express the concerns of large demographics in our electorate.
All right, we're going to take our first break. We want to get you at home involved in the conversation. What you do is head over to Facebook or you go to Twitter and sound off on tonight's question. Pretty simple one, but pretty important. Who is going to win tonight's debate? Up next, it's do or die for many of the candidates who will take the stage tonight. We're going to go through who has the most to lose, the most to win, and who could actually be out of this thing if they don't make a big splash tonight. We're going to go candidate by candidate next.